All right, guys. So today I wanted to talk about CSS variables in Bricks Builder and where we currently are as of today, being the 27th of April 2024, on how we can manage and handle those CSS variables. Now, CSS variables are extremely important. They make CSS so much easier to manage, to scale, to create modifiers. It's something that I would use in probably 90% of the CSS that I write. I use variables. So how that's managed and how easy that is to do in Bricks is important to me and probably to many of you as well. So I'm going to look at where we currently are at with this Bricks beta 1.9.8 beta, which came out a couple of days ago. I'm going to look at the variable manager that they've added to the class manager, where it currently sits. I'm also going to then take a look at automatic CSS and advanced thema, which are add-ons, both absolutely brilliant in their own ways, and how they manage the CSS variables and some of the pros and cons of those. Now, I must stress that I'm using the Bricks 1.9.8 beta. I'm using the automatic CSS 3 version 3 beta, and I'm using the current version of AT, which is advanced thema AT 2.5.3. So here's the beta for automatic CSS, and this is on a test local site. Never ever use betas on a live site. This is just for a snapshot of where we're at and just having a bit of a play with where these guys are at. But yeah, just don't use this on a live site. I'll refer to advanced thema as AT and automatic CSS as ACSS because I get tongue-tied in trying to talk about those two names. So anyway, so let's rip into it. So the first thing I'm going to mention is I've created using WP Codebox, I've created a simple CSS external file with two variables. One I've called ext test1, the other one's ext test2. So these are just external style sheet variables, and we want to see whether we can use those in Bricks easily. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is the new Bricks variable manager. So in a empty builder, a few versions ago in Bricks, they added this icon up the top left here, which was the class manager. So the built-in Bricks class manager. Now when you point at it, it actually says classes / variable. So that is in the beta, which will obviously be in the next release version. So the first thing I noticed is that when I click on this icon here, because I've got ACSS installed, which has a lot of classes, utility classes in there, when I click on that, there's a bit of a delay before it actually opens up the class manager. So I assume it's doing something with passing those classes. That was actually quicker than it normally is, but there is a delay before it opens. And there's no close button or X on the dialog. You just got to click away from the dialog. Again, if I click on it, there's a delay before it comes up. So if it does that to you, don't be alarmed. Don't just keep clicking it and hoping that it's going to open for you. Okay, so here's the class manager that was introduced a few versions ago. And you'll notice up the top here, we've now got variables. And I've created 3 variables here. Easy way to create them is just down the bottom. You've already got the dashes, so you just type bricks, test, I'll just call this test 4 to be nice and creative. 4, and we'll make that black. Oh. Okay, and first thing I noticed in here is that the enter key does not save the value. So that's a very common thing that I'm seeing in the Bricks UI. They don't use the enter key to save a value. Like for example, when you're creating colors and you're editing colors, you press the enter key, it doesn't do anything. So you have to hit this little save icon here, which has got the label create, and that creates the variable for you. At this point, if I hit the refresh, that variable won't exist because this is only in the builder. I have to hit the save button up the top right, and now it's saved to the back end. So if I refresh the page, I've got those variables. Now there is a bug here that is also present with the Bricks classes, and that is, I'm going to show you what happens if I try and delete all of these. So it says there's no variables. Hit the save, jump out of there, hit the refresh. And let's go back to our variable manager. Variables, they're all still there. And what's happening here is that with bricks, it does with the classes as well. If you try to save an empty set, it doesn't do anything at all. But if I just delete, say, one of these, and I've got at least one left, then it does work. So if I hit save on that and then I refresh, have a look back in there. Okay, and we'll see our test 4 has gone. So if you try to clean all these out and delete them all and wondering why every time you hit delete, it doesn't do anything, that's the reason. There has to be at least one left, otherwise it doesn't delete. All right, so that's the creating of those variables. Now, I'm going to use a section here. I'm just going to add a heading. We'll make a nice big heading so we can see it. So I'll just make it heading 1. And what you've got in here is with the, so you can go into the classes and variables and manage them there. To use them, what you do is you go to, say, for example, your style tab, typography. We're going to do our color because we are using colors on these. And if we go to our raw value, we see now we've got this variables icon there. If I click on that, it's going to show me the 3 variables we've created in bricks. It also shows me a little icon where we can actually manage those variables if we want to create some additional ones in there. Okay, what happened there? We clicked away. Okay, let's go back to it. So if you want to use any of those variables, you go to the raw tab, variables, and select the variable you want. Okay, now, I don't know if you've noticed here, but there's one thing that is missing. External test 1, external test 2, not available there. So they're not even being read into this list here. It'd be really cool if maybe these are the variables that are created with the bricks variable manager. Maybe there's a tab here for variables found in loaded style sheets. It is possible, and I'll show you a little bit later with AT that it can actually do it. So it'd be really good so that this is not just restricted to the variables you've created in bricks. You could select any variable, so it could be from your frameworks like AT or Core Framework or ACSS. You could have the variables here in the one place, so you're not having to do it in multiple ways. It'd be nice if it had a tab here for your loaded or style sheet variables or whatever they want to call it, and list those there as well. That is something that would be nice to have, but doesn't exist. It'd also be nice if you had an autocomplete. So if I started doing this here, actually that is working there, but if I did that just brings these up. Okay, so it's still not giving us any of our other variables. Okay, so that is how you create and use the variables. Now in the CSS tab, so we can create a root, so that's referring to the ID. There again, there's no autocomplete. If I start typing, there's nothing there. It doesn't bring up an autocomplete, but there's a little icon down the bottom right here, which is your variables, and you can select bricks test 1, bricks test 2, etc. So you can actually set your variables, but again, only the variables you've defined in the bricks variable manager, not your external variables, not your framework variables from whatever framework you're using. It's only restricted to what you've defined in bricks. So it's a bit limited. I hope that when they release this, it's more usable by including variables from the framework and from external style sheets that are loaded, etc. Okay, so that is the bricks variable manager. Useful, but could be more useful. All right. So now we're going to look at ACSS. I've already got it installed and activated. So with ACSS, if I go to my typography here, there's a couple of ways we can set the variables that we're going to use on here. One is to right click on this little picker here, the droplet, and then I get my context menu. Here's all my colors. I want that to be my secondary color. That automatically puts var secondary into the raw field. So if I right click again, and I want my color of, say, this action semi-light. Go down here, it's automatically putting that in there. So I'll just delete that. You can also right click on the field and it knows that's a color field, and you can select it from there as well. So you've got a few options with ACSS. So you can right click on the actual picker. It doesn't know what that is at this stage, so there's a color, or you can right click on the actual raw field and you can pick from there. Okay, so that's ACSS. Again, there's no autocomplete. So there's no type ahead. So I can't just type ahead here and say, look for action. Or you've actually got to know what those are, or you've got to use the right click context. I think the right click context is pretty cool in this sense. However, yet again, none of your other variables, so all these WP Codebox variables, or you might have additional library that you load, none of that is available here. So there's no extra tab here for other variables found in style sheets. It's only the ACSS style sheet. So it's great, and it's super quick doing this, and using this for any input. Like for example, if we go to layout, we're padding, we just right click there, and there's our gaps, etc. Gives those. It's really super fast. I love how they've done that, but it does not automatically include any other variables, only the ACSS framework variables. So that's something that could possibly be improved. Okay, right, so that is the ACSS side of it. Again, in the CSS, you're not getting any additional features in here in the CSS. I think there is in the ACSS 3 beta. I actually haven't looked at it yet. There is a new CSS editor. To be honest with you, I haven't actually looked at that to see what features it has. But maybe that's got some variable control in there as well. Right, so that's what we're currently at with Bricks Variable Manager and with the ACSS variables. Okay, the next one I'm going to do is enable the advanced themer and show you some settings in here. So once you enable advanced themer, there's a couple of things you want to make sure you've got managed, your control. So under the global settings, you can enable the global theme and CSS variables. And then in here, you've got some, scoped variables which are automatically as part of ACSS. That's part of it. That's already there. And you can create some custom variables in there as well. And you can even import from a style sheet to import those variables into AT. I don't use this because I use AutomaticCSS as a framework, and AT is normally very good at being framework agnostic. So every feature except for this and the colors has no impact on your framework. So I normally disable that, so I don't use that. But you can use that if you want to. But just knowing it's there is enough for now. Okay, the other thing is in the builder tweaks on the elements, the superpower CSS control. I'm going to show you that because that is absolute gold in the way that you create CSS. And also in the classes and styles, you've got this suggestion drop down for CSS variables, which is a look ahead or type ahead or whatever you like to call it. Those two together make using variables in Bricks absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to enable those two. Save that. I'm just going to refresh our builder here. Okay, well, I didn't save anything. Okay, let's go back and stick our heading in there. Put that back to an H3, or H1 I should say. So this is locked by default with my settings, so I'm just going to unlock the styles on that. Okay, so advanced themer. Now, if we go to our typography here and have a look at our color settings, and then down in the raw there, and we just start typing. So if I've got ACSS, so if I start typing primary, look at that, the look ahead. There's my primary color. If I start typing accent, there's my accent with all the variations. So I can change it just by starting to type something, and it will find everything related to that. And that's going to load it from all style sheets. So remember those external styles that we created through WP Codebox. If I just start typing --ext, there's my external test1 and test2, and we can use those CSS variables from the loaded style sheet. So this could be a framework, this could be your own SAS or CSS, it doesn't matter. AT automatically finds those and will automatically bring those up in that look ahead. Cool, right? So let's have a look at how they handle the CSS. This is with the Superpower CSS enabled, and you see now CSS tab is replaced with what they're calling Superpower CSS. You got a bunch of extra features here, right? But the cool things are, I'm just going to do a capital R tab, and there's my root with the brackets done. Super cool, right? Now, if I type color and I start typing primary, there's my color primary, okay? And that is the ACSS color primary. If I want to use my external style sheets, I just start typing ext, and here's my external test2, and I'm using my external test2 variable. So it doesn't matter whether you create these in bricks. Actually, I'll try the bricks ones as well. So I'll just do bricks test2. So it doesn't matter whether I create these variables using the new bricks variable manager, whether I create them in a external script in WP Codebox, or whether I create them in or I use a framework like ACSS or Core Framework. All of those automatically autocomplete here, which is absolutely brilliant. So there is a downside. So if I define a variable, so for example, if I go back to the topography here and go into there, I can actually use the bricks test. Oops. Why am I not working? Just refresh. Part of the problem with using betas, I think. So I'm just going to refresh that. Okay, so if I go back to my topography and I'm on the raw, and I start typing bricks test, I can use those there. Okay, I can use the ACSS variables there. Okay, I can use any of those except for the ones that I actually define in bricks. So if I go into my CSS here and I create a variable called internal purple, I'll create a variable called internal test and call it purple. We're going to save that and refresh this. So we know that we got a fresh builder. It should have read all this. Okay, and I go back to my heading. Okay, and I start typing in here, internal. Doesn't work. But if I actually type it in as a var internal test, I get my color purple. So the autocomplete doesn't work here for any of the variables that you've defined in the bricks class system. So anything you define in here doesn't work, but anything you define externally in a style sheet, so your framework, anything like that, or that you define through the bricks class manager here, the variable manager in here, any of that is available, but the rest of it, if you define it within the CSS here, then it doesn't work. The autocomplete doesn't work. So that's maybe something that Magic Maxime could work on, because that would be brilliant. That would be a complete circle where using AT, no matter where you define your CSS variables, they're usable everywhere. Okay, so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. That's three things that, or three ways that I can currently see that I can manage my CSS variables. I would say from all of these, my preference would absolutely be AT or Advanced Seamer, because of the look ahead, which basically doesn't restrict you to variables that were created with Advanced Thema. They can be from bricks, they can be from ACSS, from Core Framework, from your WP Code box. Doesn't matter where you create them, those variables are usable through the look ahead or autocomplete or whatever you like to call it. So that's where we're at. Again, it is something that will probably change in the near future. Bricks is in beta, ACSS is in beta. Who knows what the releases of those are going to be. So if you're looking at this in the future and it's different, please don't write to me and say, hey, that's wrong, or that's not the way it works, because that is the way it works as of today. All right, guys, so if you like this kind of thing, hit the subscribe, hit the like. Thanks, guys.